what typically do you see businesses doing that they shouldn't do or not doing and they should do? My perception is that a lot of small business owners will seek a CPA to get their tax done, but getting their tax done becomes problematic because their books aren't managed in a way that will enable the right information to be delivered to the CPA so that the tax return is done right, because the CPA can only work with the information he's given. So he's typically not going to spend time going into the client's books and figuring out what the business is doing and whether they're doing it the right way.
That is correct. They think they need a CPA, and really what they need is just their books and good financial, have a good structure for their accounting software and systems so that they have good financial data to give the CPA.
So what would be examples of a client where they haven't given the CPA the right information?
They had no accounting software at all. They didn't have anything in an accounting software, so it wasn't anything they could even provide a CPA to do a tax return. And for another contractor, his accounting was in 2 different softwares for the same year, so he had no way to hand off what he's done for the year and all of his accounting information to a CPA to have a tax return prepared. He was using QuickBooks Online for the previous year, and he just gave the CPA the access to QuickBooks Online, and they went in and pulled his data. He overpaid his tax by hundreds of thousands of dollars off. I just take the tax return and I look at the accounting software and I put those 2 things together. What are you showing for cost of goods in here? What are you showing for expenses? What are you showing for revenue? And none of that matched up. It was so grossly off. And I kept going back to the CPA, this is off, this is off, this is off. I don't understand where you're getting these numbers. And he just wouldn't respond. And then finally, he just stopped responding to me at all. Then we got a different CPA. And then he got a third CPA, which is not right. It skewed 2021, but we had to file it because the second CPA drug his feet for so long. We had to file 2021 and get that filed. And for 2020, from a CPA took those raw numbers and just entered that into a tax return, and that's what was filed. It was incorrect, which tells me that his accounting software wasn't organized in a good way to give good figures to accurately show his true revenue and expenses, cost of goods, things like that. So we know that was off. That then bled into the following year and then ended up skewing those numbers because the CPA will then throw figures from a previous year into a new year just to try to balance things out.
The thing that jumps out at me here is it sounds like the CPA, they're looking at the accounting software and they're just saying, oh, these are the numbers, but there's no thought going into or validation going into whether they're the right numbers or not.
I can tell you from experience that every CPA I've worked with, regardless of what company they represent, they all just take whatever numbers you hand them and that's what they plug into a tax return, period.
What we can say then is with a lot of small businesses, and we're using this one as an example, books aren't intelligently managed. And by intelligently, I mean thoughtfully managed to make sure that the numbers in there are accurately represent what is really happening in the business. In this particular case, this local builder overpaid their taxes by approximately $200,000 because there was $800,000 worth of revenue that wasn't actually done.
They just take it at face value, whatever you hand them. It's extremely important that what you hand a CPA better be accurate.
As a business owner myself, I would assume that if I gave a CPA access to our books, he would be able to analyze it and extract accurate information, and then his job is to make sure that we pay the minimum tax without breaking the law legally. That's the job, is to analyze the books and figure out how to pay the least tax. And what you're saying is it's almost like they, without any thought whatsoever, they take the numbers, fill in a form, and they're done.
Yep, that's it. I had the same illusion that you did. That's what you think they're doing, and they're not. And they don't understand the ramifications of what they're entering in the system and how they're entering that in, how that information is going to be used then for that owner's tax return.
So if a CPA doesn't help you understand how to track and financially manage your business accurately so that you pay the minimum taxes, and if the bookkeeper doesn't do that either, whose job is it to do it?
Either a financial advisor or CFO, and determine good tax strategies. And then when you determine what your tax strategies are, then the owner shares that with the accountant, and the accountant makes sure that all of the transactions that occur in that accounting software are in line with the tax strategies you're trying to achieve. The accountant works with the CPA after the owner and the CPA have kind of determined what the tax strategies are. Then the accountant and the CPA can work together to kind of make sure that the accounting software is set up in a way, the chart of accounts, the items, they're pointing to the right chart of accounts, and things are going in the accounting software where they need to be accurately reported on the tax return. If you work with a CPA initially, you sit down with them, you tell them, this is my business, this is what I do, this is how I collect my revenue. Yeah. And this goes along with your discussion because people think that's not important.
If you're a business owner like me, who do I get to do that piece to make sure that my books are accurate and optimized?
And that's the problem. Most owners do not know their books are wrong until they get a very good bookkeeper can see it.
Okay, so what we're saying then is most bookkeepers aren't able to do this and don't do this. What you need is a very good bookkeeper that knows how to report the business accurately and to optimize it. So we're saying a bookkeeper should do this. It's unfortunate that most of them don't because they just don't provide that level of service.
And I can give you an example of a situation that I just ran into where a bookkeeper just enters things in the way they think it should go. And then I noticed that the numbers were skewed in the income side. So as I started researching to find out why these numbers were skewed, I saw what the problem was. Every time they applied a discount to a vendor bill, that was going up in the sales numbers. That wasn't a sales numbers. It's income, but it's not a sale. So it should have been pointing to a different type of account, which is an other income account, not a sales income account.
So what we're talking about is a bookkeeper that has the ability to analyze the books for accuracy and to think about how to optimize them to minimize tax return. And that's where we're seeing the gap between a typical bookkeeper and what we would see as either a good or advanced bookkeeper. Is that accurate?
Yeah. There's another example of a mistake that I saw. One of the people that does their accounting entered in some items, and when you enter in an item that you're going to sell and put on an invoice, if I purchase the item, it's a two-sided item. If I purchase it, what cost of goods account do I use? And if I sell it, what income account do I use? They created these items as a one-sided item. I only sell it. I don't ever purchase it, but I'm going to sell the item, and they had it pointing to a cost of goods account. So on every single invoice that was created with that item on it, or all of those items they had created incorrectly, that all went into cost of goods. Every time you had an invoice and then you received the money, that money didn't go into sales, it went into cost of goods. So the cost of goods on here was just like, okay, that's just crazy. That doesn't even look right. That's where the general population of accounting people don't think about what they're really doing.
What it sounded like you were saying is that they were over-reporting their cost of goods. So their cost of goods appeared to be much higher than they actually were.
Right.
So that means that it was inaccurate, which means they would have paid less tax.
They would have paid less tax because it's in cost of goods.
If you were going to advise a business owner on what he should do to get this right, what would be the correct language? You would say something like, you need to get a bookkeeper that not only understands how to do basic bookkeeping, but understands how to analyze your business to make sure your revenue is reported correctly and that you're optimized to pay the minimum tax before it goes to a CPA.
I think that's right. I think they need to have a bookkeeper that not only understands the accounting process, but they also need to be able to analyze that financial data to make sure that things are correct.
Would it be realistic to go to a CPA and say, look, I want somebody to do that, what we've just described, to be a financial controller, to understand my business and to make sure my books are accurate and they're optimized to pay the least tax? Would it be realistic to go to a CPA and to expect to get that kind of a service from them?
No, they really don't. It's like the bookkeeper and the CPA are two completely different worlds. Perfect example of that is that this California contractor is now going to a completely different accounting method called completed contract method. In doing that, this person is a financial advisor. She is a CPA, but she is his financial advisor. And she said, okay, then I think we need to go to completed contract method. And basically, I'm now responsible for figuring out this completed contract method and how do I set that up, that entire new accounting method, how do I set that up in QuickBooks? She can tell me that that's what needs to be done. They're not going to tell you how to do it.
What you really need is somebody that can provide accountancy services that can make sure that the information that goes to the CPA is both accurate and optimized. And that is what is missing in a lot of small businesses, is they just don't have somebody that is on top of the bookkeeping from that point of view. They're not analyzing it. The big so what of this to me is a lot of businesses are making a big mistake because they're assuming they just need a CPA and the CPA is going to look after them from a tax liability point of view and optimize them for paying least taxes. And actually, the CPA just basically fills in a form based on the numbers that he's given. And that's certainly my experience personally, is that the value they provide is minimal. So you really need a good accountant who can help you get the right information to a CPA and can work with the CPA and interpret what they're saying so that the right things are implemented, or help you select a good CPA.
And to be able to challenge that CPA. If they're telling you something that you don't think is correct, then go research it and see what you come up with and challenge that CPA. If you want to tell me something and this is what you think it's how it should be, then I'm going to go check that out and I'll see if I agree with you. And if I don't agree with you, then I'm going to come back and question you on it and I'm going to challenge you on it. And you're going to have to explain to me why you said it has to be that way.